This television series is about creative visions and respect for humanity.
Hi, what you're looking at here is a cutaway of a 1945 model 3350 engine, used on the B-29 bomber.
Hello, I'm Don Dye. Welcome to the Southern Museum of Flight. December is Wright Brothers Month at the Southern Museum of Flight. We do it every year. And this year, as part of the celebration, we will have the builder of a John Reynolds, the builder of the Wright Brothers Flyer, will be at the museum on December 11th, Saturday, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. to talk about how he built the airplane, his years of doing so, how much it cost, and his experiences in traveling around the country exhibiting it during 2003, the centennial year. And as part of his exhibit, he will be able to present to you a poster that he has sold for a reduced price of the original print of the first Wright Brothers flight taken by the Wright Brothers at Kitty Hawk in December the 17th of 1903. So he will be at the museum on December 11th on Saturday, and we'll hope you'll come out and see him and learn all about how he built the flyer. And he knows a lot about the Wright Brothers, and he'll be glad to tell you about it. In 1915, if you look very closely, you can see the grandstands in the back of this photograph at the fairgrounds, the airplane, and you can see Vulcan extending above the airplane. His extended right arm and the head of Vulcan at 1915 was still at the fairgrounds and moved later, of course, to its present site. Our earliest two airplanes in the museum and the early aviation hangar are the Curtiss Pusher and the Wright Flyer. The lower plane's a Curtiss Pusher, and suspended above it is a Wright Flyer. It's a Curtiss Pusher displayed here on the bottom. The copper tank on the top and also the steering apparatus are original parts of this machine. It's flown by John Pruitt. In fact, our film we show in the museum on the Southern Museum of Flight includes an aerial flight by John Pruitt of this particular airplane. The second plane is the Wright Flyer, a replica built of the 1903 Wright Brothers flight plane, and that 1903 Wright Flyer is built by John Reynolds. As we said earlier, he'll be here December 11th to talk to you about how he built that airplane, how long it took, how much money, effort it cost, and also the experience he had at different places in the United States where he exhibited it. So the Wright Flyer, John Reynolds will be here on Saturday, December 11th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. to talk about the Wright Flyer and to offer for sale a reduced cost print of the original flight.
What you're looking at here is a cutaway of a 1945 model 3350 engine, used on the B-29 bomber. I'm going to kind of describe to you how this thing works. It's really no different than your lawnmower or your car engine. In this area here, the air and fuel comes in from the carburetor down to enter the supercharger. It's really nothing much more than a leaf blower, which compresses the air so we can use it at high altitude. It takes it out into these tubes that run into the cylinders themselves. Now the cylinders, we got one here cutaway so you can see inside it. The cylinders are where the pistons are. That's where we actually make the power in the engine. The piston is here. It's attached to the connecting rod, and that's attached to the crankshaft. That's how we actually create the power in the engine. The counterweights keep everything from vibrating itself to pieces. That's the big gold things here. Up front, we actually have a transmission, just like a car engine. The engine turns way too fast to actually drive the propeller at the proper speed. So we slow the propeller down where it can work for us, just like we do in your car engine with a gear set. And out on the front end is a crankshaft, and that's where the propeller goes. It pulls us through the air. In a radial engine, the cylinders and the pistons come radially out from the crankshaft. This is a 65 horsepower LeBlanc. In an opposed engine, the pistons and cylinders are literally opposing each other. This is a 6-cylinder engine out of a Cessna Bird Dog. The Rolls-Royce Packard Merlin was in the legendary P-51 Mustang, possibly the most important fighter of World War II. The Packard V12 was a very compact arrangement way to get a lot of power into little space. The Wright 3350 was the enormously powerful engine used in the World War II B-29 bomber. It was also popular in lots of the commercial airliners of the 1950s before jets became prevalent. The Pratt & Whitney 4360 was about as big as they got. It was a radial engine, but not in the typical sense. It was a 4-row radial. It had 7 cylinders on each row for a total of 28 cylinders. The 4360 was used in very large airplanes, for instance, the C-124, the Spruce Goose, and the huge B-36 bomber. But it also found its way into smaller airplanes, like the Martin Mahler attack plane or the F-2G Super Corsair. The Pratt & Whitney R2800 was an 18-cylinder engine that was used in the F-4U Corsair, as opposed to the F-2G, which had the 4360 we just saw. The Continental 975 was a very compact, high-powered engine used in early heavy helicopters. The Pratt & Whitney 985 was a popular crop duster engine. The Jacobs R755 was known as the Shaky Jake due to its rubber mounting. Flight headgear evolved a lot through the years. From the 1920s with the Gosport system to the 1940s leather and canvas helmets. By the 1950s, the speeds of jets required hard hats. By the 1960s, we'd grown some accessories. By the 1970s, the helmets were even more convenient, with slide-up visors. Modern helmets are even more complex.
At the same time the Wright brothers were flying at Kitty Hawk, or a little bit later actually, Alabama people were trying to fly airplanes. One of them is William Quick of Harvest near Huntsville, Alabama. You see a model of his airplane in the museum, and also an artist's rendition of his airplane. And so Quick, and the family tradition has that he flew. Some other people say that the airplane he had would have been very difficult to fly in a sustained flight. But anyway, Quick made a real effort, and I think that you cannot take away from them because they might not necessarily have flown, but they made attempts. Several people had airframes before 1912 in Alabama. A man over at Talladega, a Dr. Bochelle over there, a Fowler down in Mobile, and Odom brought a plane to the fairgrounds in early 1910s, 20s. And so you have several people flying airplanes. We try to document the attempts of Alabamians to fly an airplane at the same time the Wright brothers. Between World War I and World War II, about 1919 and 1939, it's often referred to as the golden age of aviation. And two of the leading figures of this was, of course, Charles Lindbergh and Amelia Earhart. And as in other parts of the early aviation hangar, we start with a national picture of Lindbergh showing the map of his route, 33 hours and 39 minutes in 1927, the first person to cross the Atlantic from New York to Paris. The next year after his Lindbergh flight, when Lindbergh came to Alabama publicizing aviation, he stayed a couple of days at Tutwiler Hotel and had a big banquet for him. The governor came, Bibb Graves and his wife Dixie, and you have Lindbergh, of course, and Lindbergh in this banquet photograph, and Sumter Smith over to sitting to his left. And you have, of course, when he came to Roberts Field, they photographed the things at Roberts Field, and Lindbergh is shown in the photograph at Roberts Field in 1927 with Sumter Smith again, the commander of the flying squadron of the Alabama Guard and a major figure of Birmingham aviation. Crop duster in aviation was the most prominent thing of aviation to agriculture in Alabama in the 1920s. The Delta Air Corporation of Monroe, Louisiana, operated a Huff Dudley like this one we have in the museum. In fact, it's one of only two left in existence of the Delta Air Corporation. Famous because as a crop duster outfit, they merged in what became Delta Airlines. But the eastmost terminal of the airlines in 1930-31 was Birmingham. So the flight went from Dallas to Birmingham to Roberts Field before it was extended to Atlanta. So Birmingham had an opportunity to become what Atlanta became later, the hub of aviation in the South. And one of the most outstanding, and you can see from the guy walking on the wings in the photograph, is Glenn Messer of Birmingham. Glenn Messer was the outstanding wing walker of Birmingham and really a legend in Birmingham aviation. And this is a 1927 Tin Lizzie Model T, an Alexander Eagle Rock airplane. Alexander Eagle Rock was a Cadillac of private planes in the 1920s. At that time built in 1928 by the Alexander Company, and that was the largest airplane manufacturer in 1928. And Alexander Eagle Rock was their premier plane, designed by Al Mooney, a 19-year-old inventor. It was flown initially in an OX-5 engine that you can see on the ground, OX-5 engine, one of our earliest engines on display in the museum. This was matched by a car built in the same period, the 1927 Model T. As the last year that they built the Model T in 1927, the next year they went to a Model A. This was Henry Ford's favorite automobile. 15 million of them were built. It was very affordable, got down to mass-produced, and installment buying was installed by Henry Ford so that nearly everybody could own a Tin Lizzie, the most famous automobile in the 1920s.
In the 1930s, pilots of airliners actually had to rely on their ears to get themselves around. They navigated using a system of beeps. The generator for those beeps is right here. This is an AN range radio transmitter. You can see the tubes used in there, the vacuum tubes. This was old-time technology, and those are big tubes. A jet engine is just like something we're all familiar with, a hair dryer. It does nothing but blow hot air. The jet engine has a fan, the compressor. This blows the air up into the combustion chamber, where the air is heated. Instead of using electricity, we're using kerosene, and the air gets a lot hotter. When the air gets hot, it expands and rushes out the back of the engine. As it rushes out the back of the engine, it passes through the turbine. The turbine is just basically a windmill that spins the drive shaft, which turns the compressor or the fan. All the air that's left rushing out the back of the engine pushes the airplane forward. A more modern version of the turbojet engine is the Rolls-Royce Allison TF-41, used in the museum's A7 Corsair. Cockpit simulators were used to introduce pilots to the complex world of flying jet aircraft. The computer flight simulators are fun for kids of all ages.
Days in a brown alley haze, and I just want you back by my side. 'Cause every little thing is gonna be alright. Singing, don't worry, don't about a thing. 'Cause every little thing is gonna be alright. Rise up this morning, smile with the rising sun. With three little birds, they perched on my doorstep, sang a sweet song, melodies pure and true, singing, this is my message to you.
This is Alabama Aviation Hall of Fame at the Southern Museum of Flight. We currently have 63 biographical sketches. So you can see the faces and read the information about the 63 outstanding aviators from Alabama who made air travel a way of life. And the first people we brought in the Hall of Fame were Oliver and Wilbur Wright, because they started the first flying field in the United States at what is now Maxwell Air Force Base in 1910. You can see Oliver and Wilbur in this particular plaque, and it indicates that they're not Alabamians. So in the Alabama Aviation Hall of Fame, you have people who are native Alabamians, and you also have people who made a major contribution to Alabama aviation. And with the first flying field in the United States, the Wright brothers certainly did that. This is a plaque in Alabama Aviation Hall of Fame for Nancy Batson Cruz, the World War II ferrying pilot. Nancy Batson Cruz was the first woman in the Alabama Aviation Hall of Fame out of 5 women currently in the Alabama Aviation Hall of Fame. In the Alabama Aviation Hall of Fame, we have 3 members of the Tuskegee Airmen. General B.O. Davis Jr., the first black general in the Air Force. We have General Chappie James, also Tuskegee Airman with the Bomber Group up in Michigan. Chappie James was the first 4-star general. Now, B.O. Davis later made 4 stars also, but he was the first 4-star black general in the Air Force. And the guy that trained these people, their mentor at Tuskegee, was a famous trainer of black aviators, Charles Alfred, called Chief Anderson. And Chief Anderson trained more black pilots than any other man alive.
Welcome to a century of Alabama aviation. Welcome to the Southern Museum of Flight. The Wright brothers once operated a flight school at what now is Montgomery's Maxwell Field. This light bulb was used as a landing light for their first night flights there. Barnstorming and daredevil tricks in the sky were meant to amuse and to amaze the people on the ground. Crowds would gather to see them, and the air show was born. In 1932, the Birmingham Aero Club was formed by community and business leaders to sponsor national air carnivals at Birmingham Municipal Airport. 50,000 people came to the first National Air Carnival, which took place at the opening of the airport. By the late 1930s, more than 300,000 people were attending the carnivals to see flying aces such as Jimmy Doolittle, Eddie Rickenbacker, and Roscoe Turner. The tradition continues each fall at the Bessemer Airport, where the Aero Club sponsors its Wings and Wheels air show. There was a time when airfields dotted the Birmingham landscape. Dixie Field, located near Elmwood Cemetery, was built by Virgil Evans in 1920. In 1924, there was a small flying field behind Eastlake Park. Roberts Field, west of Birmingham Southern College, was built in 1922. The Airdrome Restaurant nightclub was added in the 1940s. Glenn Messer built Messer Field in 1926. Later, it was known as Central Park Field. In 1931, 315 acres of farmland became Birmingham Municipal Airport. Birmingham's Municipal Airport was served by Southern Airways, Delta, Capital, and Eastern Airlines during the 1930s and 1940s. The DC-3 was the primary aircraft of post-World War II airlines. The military versions of the DC-3 were the C-47 Skytrain, Navy R-4D. They were commonly called Goonie Birds. Birmingham's aircraft industry began at Messrs Southern Aircraft Corporation, where the Airboss was manufactured from 1926 to 1930. The Betchel-McCone bomber plant repaired B-25s and B-29s during World War II. After the war, the company became Hayes Aircraft, a major city employer. Now known as PIMCO, the company is headquartered at Birmingham International Airport. In the early 1920s, the 135th Observation Squadron of the Alabama National Guard was formed by Birmingham Flying Club members, including Meisner, Sumter Smith, and Don Beatty. The group, which later became the 106th Observation Squadron, was based at Roberts Field until its move to the municipal airport. During World War II, the Alabama National Guard flew B-25s in the Southwest Pacific. Colonel Joe Shannon was one of the Alabama Air Guard pilots who flew a B-26 Douglas Invader in the 1961 Bay of Pigs mission to aid the Cuban exiles' liberation force. The museum plans an exhibit featuring a B-26 bomber and a T-33 jet trainer to honor the Alabama Guard members who died during this operation. In Vietnam and the Gulf War, Alabamians took to the skies. Here, F-4 Phantom Air Force pilot Colonel Dudley Pewitt and members of his crew returned from a mission in Vietnam. A Vietnam Aeroflight suit and gear are displayed at the museum. F-4 Phantoms were flown by the Air Force, Navy, and Marine Corps in Vietnam, and by the Air Guard in the Gulf War. The F-4 Phantom that stands in front of the museum bears the name of Major General Cecil Green, former commander of the Alabama Air National Guard. Another exhibit has more than 50 engines and features a cutaway with moving parts. Models built by international modelers are displayed in another part of the museum. Flight simulators allow visitors to fly a Cessna 172. School groups, scouts, and families take part in the museum's education program. The museum's restoration shop is staffed by volunteers with a passion for planes. Alabama's astronauts reached for the stars. Scientists in Huntsville designed the rockets that would send them there.
Creative visions and the respect for humanity. We need to understand that in the whole world around us, we do share a lot of common things, a lot more than we realize.